Chud the Builder is facing decades in prison. We're getting that today for the full legal breakdown on the legal mindset. We teach you to be your own judge. I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney. So let's jump right into it. In case you guys don't know, this is Dalton Eatherly, aka Chud the Builder. Now, I put him in the nuisance streamer category because his primary type of content is rage baiting people, essentially going out there for innocent bystanders, people on the street, people that are minding their own business, trying to say offensive things to them to get them to, well, be enraged and react back, film that, and farm that for content, clout, and money. And this is something that we see as a very, very common pattern with other streamers like Johnny Somali. He just happens to be in the US and happens to be, once again, cloaking this under the common veil of freedom of speech. But just like with Johnny Somali, sometimes the most heinous thing they do or the worst thing they do isn't actually the thing that ends up getting them in trouble. While everyone knows Dalton for dropping the N-bomb on people, in this case, what he's been charged with are multiple criminal charges in several counties, some of which have absolutely nothing to do with the language that he actually spoke. There's no possible argument for free speech, such as this video here, which we're going to look at, where he has an encounter in a restaurant, and we'll see how he deals with that restaurant.
But yeah, still here we are.
You're not filming, are you?
Filming? We're live streaming.
I would prefer you not live streaming.
So they're in an upscale restaurant in Nashville. So they're going to this restaurant, and right off the bat, they're saying, hey, are you filming? Like, we prefer if you don't do that. We don't want that in here. Very reasonable request, asked very nicely. And in almost all cases, if you're going into a business, if you're going into somewhere and they ask you nicely, you should comply with that. There's no reason why you need to force yourself as a live streamer into this situation and into a restaurant or place of business. But he doesn't give up. And we'll see here how he pushes even further.
Oh, okay. What are you about to tell us we can't eat here?
Yeah, we would never do that.
See, he's making the assumption, he's pushing that assumption that, hey, you're going to kick us out of here, you're going to remove me from here. Well, that's because probably other places do that, and they have every right to do that. Something that Chud, a person who pretends to be standing for freedom of speech and the Constitution, should understand is that actually, businesses have every single right and freedom themselves. Private individuals own these businesses. Families own these businesses. And they have every right to kick you out of their private business because it is a very reasonable thing for a business to not want somebody who's yelling, being provocative, etc., at the table next to them while they're trying to eat their dinner, particularly in an upscale restaurant. But all of these nuisance streamers, such as Johnny Somali and Chud over here, they all think they are entitled to be in these places. They think that they own these places. And you'll see that play out.
Why are you recording in my restaurant? I'm live streaming this. Okay, you can turn that off, please. Okay.
So once again, the manager is now there. The manager has told him to turn it off. So now he's been told twice. But does Chud listen? No, of course he doesn't, right? He continues to stream. This is once again a pattern with these nuisance streamers. This is why they end up in run-ins with the law, because they just don't listen to people when they're asked nicely.
I'm not. I'm just asking you not to record video in the restaurant.
And that's fine. I'm just curious why I've got good money to spend here, bro.
And this is the attitude here. So he's giving up his name. He thinks he's so popular. He thinks he's so important. He's, got this inflated sense of ego. Very common with nuisance streamers because they get virality, because they get these big clips that are trending. They get attention that they never had before. They also think they can buy people out. Chud said there, I have good money. He thinks he can just buy these people out, buy out their dignity, their peace and quiet, the way they run their business. I'm just going to walk in here and I'm going to own the place. That's the ego that Chud the Builder is bringing into this, and that's exactly the problem in these cases.
I believe in freedom of speech and the Constitution, and people harass me for it.
And this is what he's using as a shield here. He's saying, hey, I believe in freedom of speech, the Constitution, but that doesn't get you a free pass to come into somebody's business and do whatever you want and just take over that business. It doesn't give you permission to also record people without their consent. They've already told you no. The guy put his hand up. He clearly did not want to be on video. This isn't the same as two influencers that are arguing with each other on the internet. This isn't people that have consented to be part of the insanity and be part of the craziness. This is just people that are trying to go about their day, normal people just trying to live their lives. And this perhaps is why there needs to be more action to shut down this type of nuisance streaming. So now that we've seen the restaurant incident, let's look at the courthouse incident facts. So the news that everybody is talking about now is the courthouse incident. A lot of people have looked past that restaurant incident, which just happened days earlier. I think it's very relevant as it shows escalation. But this courthouse incident is what may land him in jail for decades. So on May 13th, 2026, around 1:15 p.m., outside the Montgomery County Courthouse in Clarksville, Millennium Plaza Courtyard, a public area with bystanders, surveillance, Eatherly was there for a civil matter. He was allowed to be there. He got into a verbal confrontation with Joshua Fox, a 31-year-old Army veteran, also a father. Now, people are also reporting that he may have been stalking him. There may have been other facts that may come out, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But per the arrest warrant, Eatherly turned into a bladed stance. He reached for a firearm in his jacket pocket first. A physical fight ensued, and Eatherly fired multiple shots. Fox was struck, requiring emergency surgery and an airlift to Vanderbilt. Eatherly was grazed in the arm, self-inflicted during the struggle. Ricocheting bullets hit nearby walls, and Eatherly claimed self-defense, alleging that he was punched first. Sucker punch, as most reports from his side are saying. But the warrant and the evidence emphasize he initiated the gun reach. The courthouse was briefly locked down. So that's what went down on that day. So with that shoot, let's look at what criminal charges happened overall, both including the courthouse and even the restaurant, because as with all nuisance streamers, you have to lump these things together. So from that restaurant incident, he actually ended up walking out on the bill. So he not only was in there being rowdy in the beginning, not wanting to turn off his camera, but he actually walked out on that bill. And so he got hit with theft of services, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. And there's actually video of him being arrested.
There's another green one just like it right here.
Yeah, they normally park right here, man.
This same one?
Hey, sir, you're under arrest.
What did I do? Okay. Can you lock it?
Now, those are all misdemeanors, but he's facing all felonies in Montgomery County, Clarksville. So in Clarksville, he's facing attempted criminal homicide. He's facing use of a firearm during a, which all of these things are felonies, aggravated assault, and reckless endangerment. So what are the penalties for this? Well, for the Davidson County, Nashville charges, he's facing up to 11 months and 29 days in jail with fines. Now, typically this would be probation. He'd get a slap on the wrist. But now that he's looking at these other charges, I bet the prosecutors there in Davidson County are going to be ramping up their charges and ramping up their push for a more heavy sentence than they might have elsewise. With the Montgomery County charges, he's facing up to 60 years behind bars just for the attempted homicide alone. Now, the other three charges can stack up, and those can add to potentially decades behind bars. The real thing that will get him is the mandatory minimum. If Chud the Builder is hit with all of those charges, he will absolutely be locked away for a very, very long time. Now, let's look at the self-defense analysis, because this is the real debate. The real debate is, was this self-defense? Now, Tennessee has a stand your ground law. So in Tennessee, it requires four things: lawful presence, lawful conduct, reasonable belief of the need for force, proportionality, and no initial aggressor. So you have to have all of those things. And this is an affirmative defense. So if the prosecutors can actually knock out one of these elements, just one of these things, he's guilty, because you have to admit that you did it. You have to say, I shot the guy, but here's my defense. So if they knock out your defense, all you're left with is, I shot the guy. That's literally all that's left of that analysis. So when you actually apply that to Chud's case, there's some arguments pro and against Chud. First of all, he's in a public place where he had the right to be. So the lawful presence, lawful conduct, we're going to assume that. It doesn't appear at the time Chud was committing a crime, although we'll have to see how the ultimate facts play out and all the reports happen. We also have claims from Chud's side that Joshua Fox actually punched first. And if you combine this with, once again, reports of him being the stalker, of him following him, etc., then you might say, okay, this is the person who provoked this, the person who started this. But that's not where the analysis ends. And you do have to look at the other elements, such as proportionality and reasonableness. And I think this is where you might have some trouble. Now, another factor is to argue the anti-Chud side, the arrest warrant, where we actually have the facts. And mind you, there were over 100 witnesses there that day. So there were many, many people watching this, observing this, and they were looking at this and saying, okay, what happened here, and getting that into the police report. So looking at what was actually written down, it states that he escalated. The bladed stance and reaching for the gun, that's going to be escalation under a stand your ground self-defense analysis. So that's not going to look good. Also, it generally does not look good when you have non-deadly force, a punch, versus deadly force of multiple shots. Now, before anybody gets out there and goes crazy, yes, punches can sometimes be something you respond to deadly force with. For example, if someone's punching you in the head, that can be treated as deadly force, and you can respond accordingly. However, in general, for example, if you're just getting body punched or it's just a regular punch, typically a regular punch is something that you don't respond with a gun, and that's proportionality, right? So if your response is above the level where it should be, that's going to be failing a self-defense analysis. If someone punches you, typically you'd punch them back. That's a fist fight. You get in a fist fight. You're not drawing a knife or a gun or something else in that scenario. Now, the other thing is the bystanders. The bullets were ricocheting and going around, and that goes to the reasonableness of him pulling out his gun and firing multiple shots at Joshua Fox, because they're going to look at that and they're going to say, is that a reasonable use of force? Did he use more force than was necessary in this scenario? The other factor, which I think is massive, and I do think plays into the overall analysis, particularly reasonableness, is the fact that he was live streaming and that he had a documented history of confrontations. So he was live streaming to get the rage bait. That's why he exists on the internet. That's what he does. That's how he makes his money, is by getting people to rage. And because of that, you can see that when combined with the history, combined with other things he's done, as showing, hey, this guy was trying to provoke this, and this was the natural, in fact, even reasonable, expected outcome was for this type of thing to happen. Here's my judgment. Based on all of the warrants and all we have for the affidavits and all the evidence we've gotten from the actual government, I think Chud's self-defense argument is likely to lose. I also think that a jury of normal people, even conservative people in conservative Tennessee, most normal people that are not internet brained, are going to look at this and say, yeah, Chud, you went beyond what was reasonable. The force you used here was beyond reason. His other actions while live streaming also deserve jail time. You have to look at the totality of what he is doing, going into private businesses and trying to tell them what to do, to dictate what they do, to be disorderly, be disruptive. All these things deserve punishment because people will come out and copycat these things. People will see these actions, see the virality, see the news, and they will try to be the next Johnny Somali, Chud the Builder, etc. They will do these things absolutely. And if there is not a harsh punishment for nuisance streamers, there's going to be an infinite amount of copycats tomorrow. And part of the law is to disincentivize this behavior, to say, hey, you know what? You shouldn't be doing this. And I think Chud definitely needs some prison time in this case. The other factor I'll point in at the end here is his bail was set at $1.25 million, and he did have an absolute hilarious reaction to that.
So we're gonna have a bail.
I'm gonna set just a bond right now till we have our bail hearing. Then I'll let you make all the arguments. We can go through all the factors in the statute and see if that gets amended up or down. Okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to set initial bond at $1.25 million. $1.25 million.
You see the big oof there for Chud. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, that's crazy. Oh, this is two-tiered. Oh, this is insane. Well, there's a lot of factors you have to consider here. First of all, he was already out on bond for the Nashville charges. People are forgetting about that factor. The other thing is, and this is a massive factor, is that he's live streaming, profiting on this. So one of the thoughts of the judge is, hey, you're going to go out here and you're going to end up live streaming and getting into this again. You're going to be funded by your community. And seeing the Give Send Go pumped up to 200K, that is very good reason to say he might be funded, get out there and be engaging in this and endangering the community once again. So making it a barrier to prevent him from going out there and engaging in further nuisance streaming. So while some people may think this is very high, I actually think this is not out of line for this type of case. But I want to know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will catch you on the next one.